I thought my fiancé would stay by my side while I recovered from surgery, but he vanished without a word and took my sister to a romantic couples retreat, wearing the last thing my mother left me. I found out my fiancé left me while I was still throwing up blood in the hospital bathroom. Yeah, that's how this starts. I had just come out of an emergency room visit after collapsing at work. Diagnosis, acute pancreatitis. The pain was insane, like something was clawing through my insides from the back. They gave me fluids, kept me overnight, and discharged me with a strict at-home recovery plan. No alcohol, no fatty foods, no stress. Rest, hydration, small meals. Someone had to be with me for at least a few days in case of complications. And guess what? I had that someone, my fiancé. His name's Drew. We've been together for 4 years, engaged for 6 months. He knows I don't have close family around besides my half-sister Noelle. My dad lives across the country, and my mom passed when I was 17. Noelle and I were never close, but she always pretended to care around other people. You know the type. Before they discharged me, I called Drew from the hospital bed. I was groggy, swollen, nauseous, and scared. He picked up, all sweet, all, "Of course, babe. Don't worry, I'll be there. Just cancel the food delivery stuff, I'll cook. We'll get through this." I was relieved. I remember thinking, I'm so lucky to have someone like him. God, I want to go back and slap myself for that. He picked me up that afternoon, barely spoke on the drive home. I figured maybe he was stressed. It wasn't like Drew to be silent. He carried my bag in, helped me lie down on the couch, gave me my anti-nausea meds. Then he said, "I need to go grab some stuff from my place real quick. I'll be back in an hour. Just rest, okay?" And that was the last I saw of him. 1 hour turned into 3, then 6. I tried calling. No answer. I texted. No reply. Around midnight, I started to panic. I was cold, dizzy, in pain, and I could feel my stomach swelling again. I crawled, literally crawled, to the bathroom to puke. My hands were shaking so bad I couldn't even hold the toothbrush to clean up after. I slept on the bathroom floor that night, clutching a towel for warmth. Next morning, still no Drew. I called again, straight to voicemail. Then I tried Noelle just to see if she knew what was going on. Same thing. Okay, this is where it gets fun. I opened Instagram. I don't even know why. I guess I wanted distraction. But there it was, Noelle's story. A boomerang video of a rustic cabin, fairy lights glowing, 2 wine glasses clinking. Caption, "Couple's healing retreat begins champagne and fireworks." I froze. My stomach dropped. And then came the next slide. A mirror selfie. Noelle in some fancy yoga fit, with Drew standing behind her, arms around her waist. They were smiling. Her caption? "Sometimes life gives you what your soul really needs. Finally letting go of guilt and choosing joy." I wish I was making this up. I wish I was exaggerating. I stared at that screen for a full minute before my phone slipped out of my hand. I was too sick to even scream. I just lay there, half on the couch, half on the floor, my gut cramping, my heart breaking, and everything inside me going numb. They blocked me. Not just ignored me, blocked me. My own fiancé, my own sister. While I was too weak to stand on my own. And no, nobody from my family checked in, because Noelle had told everyone I was fine. That I needed space, that I didn't want visitors, which, by the way, I found out from my dad, who only called because he saw Noelle's post and thought I was on the retreat too. That night, I had crackers for dinner. The only thing left in the cabinet. My meds were still sitting on the high shelf where Drew put them, out of reach. I tried to climb onto a chair, lost my balance, and hit the counter. I sat there on the kitchen floor in the dark, head spinning, bleeding from my lip, and realized they didn't just forget me. They abandoned me. I didn't want to call anyone. I didn't want to beg, but I also didn't want to die alone in a studio apartment. So I knocked on my neighbor's door, Mrs. Lynn. She's in her 60s, always baking something that smells incredible. She looked at me and gasped. She didn't even ask questions. She just grabbed a blanket, helped me back to the couch, and said, "You're not alone anymore, sweetheart." That moment broke me, because it shouldn't take a neighbor to show basic humanity. It should have been Drew. It should have been Noelle. I asked Mrs. Lynn if she'd seen Drew or Noelle. She said yes, last week. Apparently, they'd been acting weird. Drew had loaded 2 duffel bags into the car, and Noelle was giggling about finally getting away. I went back inside, shaking. I opened the closet where I keep a few old boxes. One of them was my mom's. Inside it, wrapped in silk, was the only thing I had left from her, a silver locket with our initials. Except now, it wasn't there. The silk was unwrapped. The box had been moved. I checked again. I turned it over, I dumped it out. Nothing. And suddenly I remembered the Instagram story. Noelle's selfie. The glint around her neck. She stole the locket. That was the moment something inside me flipped. I wasn't going to cry again. I wasn't going to call. I wasn't going to plead. They thought they were clever. that they could disappear for a weekend and come back to a cleaned up mess and a quiet Talia. But they didn't just walk away. They started a war, and they have no idea what's coming. After realizing Noelle stole my mother's locket, something inside me snapped. Not in a screaming, throwing things kind of way. Number, I went silent. The kind of silence that feels like a storm is building under your skin. The kind of silence that comes after you've been humiliated, abandoned, lied to, and now you're just waiting. Because you know the people who hurt you don't think they've done anything wrong. I spent the next 2 days in a fog. Still sick. Still weak. Still trying to keep down instant oatmeal and crackers. I didn't even bother checking my phone for messages, because there weren't any. The silence wasn't just coming from them, it was from everyone. No texts from Noelle. Nothing from Drew. No calls from family. Not even a "hope you're recovering okay" from anyone who supposedly cared. I was so used to being the one who held everyone together that I never stopped to think what would happen if I disappeared. Turns out, nothing. No one noticed. Mrs. Lynn checked in again. She brought soup, pain meds, and a cheap little phone charger because mine had finally given out. I thanked her a dozen times. I felt embarrassed, like I was some helpless child. But she just smiled and said, "Don't let pride keep you from asking for what you deserve, honey." What I deserved. That word stuck in my brain, because I sure as hell didn't deserve this. Later that night, I opened my phone and pulled up Instagram again. Not because I wanted to see, but because I needed to. Noelle had posted another story. This one was a slow-motion video of her and Drew in matching robes, lying on massage tables, flower petals sprinkled across their backs. Caption: "Sometimes healing starts with letting go of the past." I stared at that video like it was something from a dream. My fiancé. My sister. On a retreat, grinning, covered in petals while I was home alone, bleeding into paper towels and rationing soup from a neighbor. I felt humiliated. But worse, I felt like a joke. Like I'd been the punchline to some long-running inside joke they both had. So I did what I always do when I feel powerless. I started writing. Not for social media, not for sympathy. Just a notes app on my phone, documenting everything. The date and time I was discharged. The meds I was prescribed and the food I had or didn't have. The voicemail log of unanswered calls. Screenshots of Noelle's posts. My call log showing Drew blocking me. My mom's locket. Gone. I even wrote out memories. Moments that didn't seem important at the time, but now felt like warnings. Like the time Drew came back from a work trip smelling like Noelle's perfume. Or when Noelle asked weirdly specific questions about our lease, like whose name was on it. Or the way Drew suddenly insisted on keeping things separate financially 2 months after our engagement. It all started lining up, like a puzzle that had been scrambled just enough to make you doubt your own eyes. And the more I wrote, the more I saw it clearly. This wasn't a mistake. This was planned. Drew and Noelle didn't just happen. They'd been slowly pulling away from me while making sure I was too busy, too tired, too distracted to notice. And I played right into it. They wanted the apartment. The freedom. The silence. They thought if they waited long enough, I'd just give up. But I didn't. I started healing, not just physically, but in a different way. A deeper way. And that's when I realized I still had access to our shared lease portal. Drew had no idea I was the primary signer. He just assumed I added his name because I loved him. Which, yeah, at the time I did. Big mistake. I logged in and saw everything. He hadn't paid his half of the rent in 2 months. He'd uploaded a change of contact form with Noelle's number listed as spouse. They were planning to renew the lease without me. That was the moment I stopped feeling hurt. I felt clear. This wasn't just betrayal. It was theft. They were trying to push me out of my own home while I was recovering from a medical emergency. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I opened a new tab and started downloading the full lease packet. My name was on every page. So I called the property manager. I told her I wanted to schedule a meeting. Immediately. She hesitated until I said, "I have evidence of an unauthorized lease change and identity fraud. I'm happy to provide it in writing." Suddenly, I had a meeting scheduled for the next morning. But here's where the twist really hits. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept rereading the lease, checking every box, every form. And then, at 3:11 a.m., Drew unblocked me and texted me. Just 2 words. "You awake?" I stared at the screen for a full minute. Then came the second message. "We need to talk, before anything gets messy." That's when I knew. He'd found out I accessed the lease. He knew I wasn't staying quiet anymore. And he was scared. He should be. Because in less than 12 hours, everything he built with lies was about to come crashing down. And I was going to be the one holding the receipts. I didn't reply to Drew's message. I didn't need to. Because 5 minutes before he texted me, "We need to talk before anything gets messy," I'd already sent the lease evidence, screenshots, and a full written complaint to our property manager. The documents were time-stamped. The email was sitting in her inbox. I knew exactly what he was trying to do. Get ahead of the fallout, convince me to play nice, maybe even gaslight me one more time. But I wasn't playing that game anymore. Still, the message rattled me. I sat up in bed, pain radiating through my side, and just stared into the dark. Everything felt warped, like I was floating in someone else's nightmare. My body was still weak. My emotions were fried. But underneath the hurt was something harder, heavier. I wasn't scared of him. Not anymore. I was angry. Truly, fully angry. Not the kind of anger that burns out. The kind that sharpens. The kind that stays steady until it turns into action. The next morning, I dragged myself out of bed, wrapped a scarf around my still bruised neck, and got into a rideshare to the leasing office. Mrs. Lynn insisted on coming with me. She sat in the waiting room while I hobbled in with a folder full of printed screenshots and documents. The property manager, Kelly, was polite but tense. I could tell she already knew something shady was happening. She scanned the documents, raised her brows at Drew's unauthorized updates, and nodded slowly. "He listed Noelle as your spouse?" I nodded. "Did you consent to that?" "No," I said. "I was in the hospital. He took advantage of me while I was recovering from a medical emergency." Her face went tight. "Okay, we'll handle this. His access will be revoked today. You're still the primary leaseholder." I didn't realize I was holding my breath until I let it out. For the first time in days, I felt like someone, anyone, was finally listening. Before I left, I asked her to email the formal termination notice to Drew, and I requested the locks to be changed within 48 hours. When I walked back out into the lobby, Mrs. Lynn looked up and smiled. "You look taller," she said, "like you just got 10 pounds of garbage off your back." I smiled back, but I didn't say anything. Because I wasn't done yet. Back at home, I opened my email and started writing again. Not to the landlord this time. To every single person who had ever said to me, "Maybe you're being dramatic. Are you sure you're not just jealous of your sister? Drew seems like such a nice guy." I typed out everything. No rants, just facts. Chronological, backed by screenshots, including Noelle's stories, Drew's texts, lease fraud, and even photos of the missing locket. The one I now knew Noelle had taken before their little retreat. Then, I hit send. Subject line, "For everyone who said I was overreacting." I sent it to my dad, my cousins, a few mutual friends who had drifted away after the engagement, even the friend who introduced me to Drew. I didn't write it to start drama. I wrote it to take back my voice. About an hour later, my phone blew up. First came the calls. From Drew. Then texts. Then voicemails. All ignored. Then a message from my cousin Jamie. "WTF. Talia. I had no idea. I'm so sorry. Just read everything. That's insane." Followed by another. "Noelle is in our family group chat trying to do damage control. She said you're twisting things." But then she left the chat. Then the final message from Jamie. "Wait, did you see her last story before she deleted it?" I hadn't, so I checked. And what I found made my blood run cold. Noelle had posted a selfie from the retreat the day before, probably not realizing what was in the background. Behind her, reflected in the mirror, was Drew, standing in their suite. He was shirtless and tattooed. The tattoo was a small black symbol on his shoulder. The same symbol I had helped design with him 6 months ago, when we were going to get matching ink for our engagement. Except, mine never happened. He told me he'd wait until the wedding to get mine added to match. In the reflection, the tattoo now had a second symbol beneath it. Not my initials. Noelle's. Stylized. Permanent. Etched into his skin. I froze. My breath hitched. My hand actually trembled holding the phone. He hadn't just moved on. He'd replaced me, before we ever broke up. He'd taken the design we made together, scratched out my name in his plans, and carved hers in under mine, like a signature on a stolen painting. I sat there in silence. I think I actually smiled. Not because I was okay, but because that was the final nail, the last lie exposed. Noelle deleted the post 10 minutes later. But it didn't matter. I had already saved it. And just like that, I realized something. This wasn't heartbreak anymore. It wasn't even betrayal. It was theft, identity theft, emotional theft, family theft. But what they stole from me, I was already taking it back. And the next thing I planned to do was going to make everything they built come crashing down. I think the best kind of revenge isn't loud. It's quiet, methodical. It doesn't yell. It just walks into a room and rearranges everything while they're not looking, until one day they open their eyes and realize you're gone, and so is every safety net they thought you'd always provide. That's where I was now. The pain in my body hadn't fully gone away. I still winced climbing out of bed, still walked like my bones were glued together with glass. But something else had healed. Something deeper. I didn't need them anymore. I didn't want their apologies. I wanted consequences. After sending the documents to my landlord and cutting Drew out of the lease, I started closing every door he and Noelle could have crawled back through. First, the utilities. Electric, water, Wi-Fi. All of them were in my name. I went online, one by one, and disconnected everything as of the next billing cycle. I wasn't petty. I gave them a week to transfer accounts. But I wasn't staying where I wasn't wanted, and I sure as hell wasn't paying for it. Then, the finances. We had one joint savings account. Drew's idea when we got engaged. I'd contributed more to it, but I let it slide at the time. Love makes you blind, but banks don't, especially when you can show legal fraud. I walked into the bank, told the manager about the lease forgery, and showed them proof Drew was no longer part of my household. They froze the account immediately. 30 minutes later, I got a string of messages from him. Are you serious? You can't just take the money. We planned that together. We're both hurting. Why are you trying to destroy me? I didn't answer, because here's the thing. He didn't care when I was actually hurting. He didn't care when I was bleeding in a locked apartment, whispering his name through a phone he'd blocked me on. So yeah, I had nothing to say now. Next, I scheduled a pickup for my belongings. I called a moving service, packed up everything in my name, my books, my desk, the couch I bought, even the silverware. I left the stuff that belonged to both of them. I didn't want anything contaminated by their lies. By the time they got back from the retreat, the apartment was half empty. Drew called again. Noelle texted some weak line about how we didn't mean for things to happen like this. I rolled my eyes so hard I almost sprained something. Then came the best part. I logged into the group email my sister and I had used for years to share family updates, photos, trip plans, even scanned documents from our mom's estate. We used it to store everything, including our mom's will. I hadn't looked at it in years. I'd always assumed the house was left to both of us equally. That's what Noelle always said. What everyone said. But this time I opened the PDF. I read every line. And that's when I found it. Buried in the final paragraph, just under the lawyer's notarization, was a condition I had completely forgotten about. To my daughter Talia, I leave full ownership of the family property at 146 Briar Lane. Noelle is permitted residence only with written permission from Talia, and only under conditions agreed upon in writing. I blinked. Reread it. 3 times. I wasn't co-owner. I was sole owner. And Noelle? She'd been squatting in that house for 2 years without permission. She used it like a vacation space. Invited friends. Hosted parties. Rented it out on weekends without asking. She'd even tried to get it appraised last year. To understand the market, she'd said. Suddenly, it all made sense. The fake closeness, the subtle digs. Why she always talked about what Mom would have wanted, not what Mom actually said. She'd been banking on me never reading the fine print. Too bad for her. I'd just become fluent in fine print. I printed the will. I emailed my lawyer. And 2 days later, I sent Noelle an official cease and desist notice, revoking her access to the house and demanding she vacate the property within 14 days. I didn't even write it with anger. I just stated facts. She called me 6 times that night. Left 4 voicemails. I listened to the last one. Her voice was shaking. Talia, please. That house is the only place I feel close to Mom. I didn't know she wrote that. I just thought it was ours. I almost felt bad. But then I remembered her Instagram caption. Sometimes healing starts with letting go of the past. So I let go. I didn't call back. Instead, I made plans to renovate the house. For me. Not for her. Not for them. For once in my life, I was claiming what had always been mine. But just when I thought I had closed every chapter, I got a notification. Someone had uploaded new documents to the shared folder in the group email. It was a receipt. A jewelry repair invoice dated 5 days before the retreat. The item? 1 silver locket. Vintage. Engraved. Minor damage to clasp. The signature on the drop-off line? Drew. I sat there reading that name over and over. He had taken the locket. Not Noelle. She'd just worn it. But he had walked into a store, handed over the last thing I had from my mother, and paid to fix it. For someone else. And now, finally, I understood the full truth. He hadn't just stolen my trust. He hadn't just taken my home. He'd taken my mother's memory and tried to make it theirs. That's when I knew. This wasn't over. Not yet. I stared at that receipt for a long time. There was something so final about it. Not just because Drew had taken the last thing I had from my mom, but because he tried to erase that it was ever mine at all. He knew exactly what that locket meant. He knew I kept it wrapped in silk in a box only I touched. He knew it was my mother's, and he handed it to Noelle. Polished, repaired, rebranded, like it was just another accessory in their fake little fantasy. That was the moment I stopped playing defense. I didn't want apologies anymore. I wanted accountability. So I sent one final message. Not to Drew, not to Noelle, but to everyone, my family group chat, our mutual friends, even the lawyer handling my mom's estate. I uploaded every file. The will, the lease forgery, the bank fraud, the locket receipt. I wrote, I've stayed quiet long enough. You wanted to believe I was dramatic, difficult, too emotional. But here are the facts. And I'm not asking for support. I'm making sure the truth is known. Then I logged out. What followed was chaos, but not on my end. Noelle was kicked off the family property. She sent one last message begging to stay just a little longer. Said she didn't have anywhere to go. I reminded her that I didn't either when she left me alone after surgery. Drew tried to show up at my new apartment. I didn't open the door. He yelled through the hallway that I was ruining his life, that I had no right to take everything. I called security. They escorted him out. The bank froze his access to the joint account permanently, and the landlord flagged his name for lease fraud. He's going to have a hard time renting under his own name for a while. But what hit them hardest was the silence. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I didn't post some dramatic monologue. I just took away what they always assumed I'd give. Access. Access to my time, my energy, my help, my forgiveness. They lost their audience. And without it, they unraveled. The last time I saw either of them was by accident. I was walking through the park with Mrs. Lynn. Yes, we still talk. And I saw them sitting together on a bench. Noelle looked tired. Drew looked smaller somehow. Like the mask had finally cracked and there was nothing left behind it. He looked up and saw me. I didn't stop. Didn't wave, didn't flinch. I just walked past. And that, right there, was justice. Because the worst thing you can do to people like that is move on without needing them to see it. They tried to break me down so quietly, so subtly, that even I doubted it was happening. But I paid attention, and in the end, they taught me how to protect myself by becoming everything they never expected me to be. I'm still healing, still building. But this version of me? She doesn't ask permission. She remembers, she knows who she is, and no one ever gets to rewrite that again. What I learned? Sometimes the deepest betrayals come dressed as love. But survival isn't about staying soft for people who leave you bleeding. It's about choosing yourself. Loudly, quietly, fiercely, no matter who it shocks. If you've ever been the one holding everything together and they left you like you were nothing, drop a comment. I promise you're not alone. And if you want more stories like this, hit subscribe. Because next time someone tries to erase you, I want you to remember, you write the ending.